Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Thursday, February 21st, 2019. A lot to get to today. College basketball, NBA, NHL, my Major League Baseball DH rankings, my latest mock draft, my best bet of the day, and obviously a huge injury in college basketball that could potentially change the outlook of this entire season, depending on the severity of the injury, which I don't believe is to be severe. Let's start with it. Zion Williamson, obviously, literally 30 seconds into the game, hurts his knee, and his foot literally breaks through his sneaker, which causes the slip and the hurting of the knee, and then he doesn't return for the game. And obviously, Carolina takes advantage and wins the game. I'll get to it, meaning the Carolina victory portion of it, once I get to that game. But the big story is that Zion Williamson has a left knee strain, and it's mild according to Coach K. Could be out a couple games and could be out a couple weeks. I do think he will return this season, although the talk shows today throughout the sports world are debating whether he should sit the rest of the season and focus on the NBA draft, and they're comparing it to the Nick Bosa situation with Ohio State in college football, but that's different. Nick Bosa doesn't have the stardom as Zion Williamson, but now they think about it, Nick Bosa, if he was healthy, Ohio State's probably a playoff team and doesn't lose that debacle of a game to Purdue, and maybe they do lose the Purdue game, but who knows, but that's debatable. But there was a lot of ramifications to this. Obviously, Zion's future with Duke, and whether he sits out for the remainder of the year to focus on the draft, or whether he comes back and helps Duke win a championship. And yeah, small sample size, but I think last night proved a little bit that Duke is not a one-man team, but certainly isn't a title contender without Zion Williamson. That's what we learned last night. RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish are the other two key cogs on that team that are projected to go in the top 5 of the draft. And they both had good stat lines, but most of that was in garbage time, and Duke's defense was terrible. That's where they missed Zion the most. If Zion was there, a lot of people on social media were saying that Duke probably would have won the game. I somewhat disagree. I'd say that I don't know if they would have won, but I certainly know that game would have been competitive, and North Carolina would have got up for that game with or without Zion Williamson. And Carolina's a darn good team, and I think the national media is disrespecting them a little bit today, although they did get some credit by some people, but I think they deserve more credit than they've gotten. And I hope the committee doesn't punish Carolina and says, oh, well, they won that game because Zion got hurt. If I see that and hear that from people in the media, I'm just going to be shaking my head, because that is disrespectful to Carolina. But on the flip side, for Duke, they probably won't get punished for this loss because of the Zion injury. And Carolina's a darn good team in their own right. And so I think Duke is safe in terms of a 1 seed, but if Zion's out for a while and they lose games, then you can start talking to me about whether Duke's going to be a 1 seed or not. But I'll tell you who's now in the conversation for a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, and that's the North Carolina Tar Heels, who, yes, took advantage of no Zion Williamson, but most importantly got an important road win to bolster their resume, which kind of makes up for, or heck, even more than makes up for, the disappointing home loss against Virginia last week. Now let's just get to the results of the rest of the games that were played, and I'll obviously talk about the Duke game as we go through. Number 10, Michigan State defeats Rutgers 71-60. Michigan State is 22-5. Rutgers is 12-14. Georgetown upsets number 17 Villanova 85-73. A fantastic win for Patrick Ewing, the biggest one of his Georgetown head coaching career. They're 16-10. Villanova's 20-7. Mississippi State defeats Georgia 68-67. Mississippi State 19-7. Georgia 10-16. This game was won by Mississippi State because the coach of Georgia, Tom Green, got teed up because of what he felt was a missed call. And the Bulldogs took advantage of that. Florida upsets number 13 LSU 82-77 in overtime. A great win for Mike White and the Gators. 15-11 on the year. Kind of lingering as a possibility as an at-large now with this win and then the win at Alabama. And obviously LSU drops to 21-5. Syracuse defeats number 18 Louisville 69-49. An impressive win for Syracuse. They're 18-8. Louisville's 18-9. I'm wondering if Louisville is psychologically damaged from that loss against Duke, in which they blew the big lead in. And obviously Zion was key in that comeback. And sad story, after this game, Jim Boeheim struck and killed somebody while driving home from the game. And obviously, I'm sure he didn't mean to do it, but it's just a sad story that he killed somebody unintentionally while the person was crossing the street, and he just flat out struck him and hit him with the car. Xavier defeats Seton Hall 70-69. Absolutely brutal loss for Seton Hall as they drop to 16-10. Xavier goes to 14-13. Memphis defeats Tulane 102-76. Memphis 16-11. Tulane 4-21. NC State defeats Boston College 89-80 in overtime, so BC barely covers. NC State 19-8. BC 13-12. Richmond defeats Fordham 72-69. Richmond 11-15. Fordham 11-15. St. Bonaventure defeats LaSalle 62-60. I knew this game was going to be closer than the point spread suggested. St. Bonaventure's 12-14. LaSalle 8-17. George Washington upsets UMass 79-67. I thought this result would happen. George Washington's 8-18. UMass is 9-17. Florida Gulf Coast defeats Lipscomb 67-61. Florida Gulf Coast 12-17. Lipscomb 21-6. Brutal loss for Lipscomb. North Florida defeats Jacksonville 80-73 in overtime. North Florida 13-16. Jacksonville 12-16. NJIT defeats Stetson 82-77. NJIT 19-9. Stetson 6-22. North Alabama defeats Kennesaw State 76-61. North Alabama 9-19. Kennesaw 5-23. Lafayette defeats American 70-68. Lafayette 10-16. American 13-13. Lehigh defeats Army 91-81. Lehigh 18-8. Army 12-16. Loyola Chicago defeats Evansville 70-58. Loyola Chicago 17-11. Evansville 10-18. Indiana State defeats Illinois State 73-50. Indiana State 14-13. Illinois State 14-14. Texas A&M Corpus Christi defeats Stephen F. Austin 65-55. Corpus Christi 11-15. Stephen F. Austin 13-12. McNeese defeats Central Arkansas 83-75 in overtime. McNeese 18-8. Or I'm sorry, it's 8-18. And Central Arkansas is 10-16. Sam Houston State defeats Nichols 84-74 in overtime. Sam Houston State 18-9, Nichols 11-15. Omaha defeats Western Illinois 77-63. Omaha 17-9. Western Illinois is 8-18. Houston Baptist defeats Northwestern State 92-54. Houston Baptist 10-14. Northwestern State 10-17. Lamar defeats Incarnate Word 76-58. Lamar 15-12. Incarnate Word 6-20. New Orleans defeats Southeast Louisiana 89-68. New Orleans 15-10. Southeast Louisiana 13-14. South Dakota defeats Denver 72-45. South Dakota 11-15. Denver 7-20. Valparaiso defeats Southern Illinois 55-52. Valparaiso 14-14. Southern Illinois 14-14 as well. Northern Iowa defeats Missouri State 63-53. Northern Iowa 13-15. Missouri State 15-13. Ohio State defeats Northwestern 63-49. Ohio State 17-9. Northwestern 12-14. Providence defeats St. John's 78-59. A huge win for Providence. They're 15-12. St. John's drops to 19-8. A very disappointing loss after the Nova win. Auburn defeats Arkansas 79-56. Auburn 18-8. Arkansas 14-12. Number 8 North Carolina upsets Duke 88-72. I discussed this a little bit before about whether Zion should play for the remainder of the year or not. I think it's debatable. It's either you sacrifice your school a championship and focus for the NBA, or you risk getting more severely hurt by going back to help Duke win a championship and kind of ruining your draft stock if you get hurt again. So it's kind of a debate. Obviously, Duke drops to 23-3. North Carolina improves to 21-5. Credit to Carolina all the way there. Marquette, who's number 11, defeats Butler 79-69. Marquette quietly number 11. They're 22-4 very quietly, and Butler is 15-12. Georgia Tech defeats Pitt 73-65. Georgia Tech 12-15. Pitt 12-15. Wichita State defeats Tulsa 81-60. An impressive win for the Shockers. They're 13-12. Tulsa's 16-11. Creighton defeats DePaul 79-67. Creighton 14-13. DePaul 13-12. Arizona State defeats Stanford 80-62. Arizona State 18-8. Stanford 14-12. Washington State upsets Colorado 76-74. Wazoo 11-15. Colorado 16-10. Long Beach State defeats Cal State Northridge 80-78. Long Beach State 10-18. Cal State Northridge 10-17. Air Force defeats Fresno State 64-61. A huge upset in the Mountain West. The Air Force is 11-15. Fresno 19-7. That pretty much ends Fresno's chances of an at-large. Colorado State defeats San Jose State 91-70. Colorado State 10-16. San Jose State 3-22. San Diego State upsets number 6 Nevada 65-57. Impressive win for the Aztecs. San Diego State 17-9. Nevada 24-2. Utah State defeats New Mexico 71-55. Utah State 21-6. New Mexico 11-15. And Washington defeats Utah 62-45. Washington 21-5. Utah 14-12. Navy Loyola Maryland was postponed yesterday due to inclement weather. And those two teams are playing right now as a makeup game, and Loyola Maryland has a 42-34 advantage over Navy at the half. 7 o'clock on ESPN, number 7, Michigan at Minnesota. Michigan's a 7.5-point favorite. My pick here, straight up, is obviously Michigan. I do think Minnesota can cover, but I don't think they will. So give me Michigan to win and cover, but I'm going to say they barely cover. I'm going to say it's a 7-point game rather than like a 5-point game. Georgia Southern at Coastal Carolina, Georgia State at Appalachian State, Youngstown State at Northern Kentucky, Towson at Hofstra, Charleston Southern at William & Mary, James Madison at Northeastern, UNC Wilmington at Elan. On ESPN2, you have UCF at Cincinnati. Cincinnati's favored by 7.5. I think that's a little big of a number, but Cincinnati's just way better than UCF, and they play good defense. So give me Cincinnati to win and cover. Albany at Stony Brook, Binghamton at UMass Lowell, Hartford at New Hampshire, Vermont at UMBC, Mount St. Mary's at Central Connecticut State. By the way, Vermont at UMBC is on ESPNU. I missed that. So Vermont's a 6-point favorite. They're the best team in the America East Conference. I think they'll win and cover. UMBC has been playing very well of late, but they're not the same team as last year that upset Virginia. LU Brooklyn at Robert Morris, Sacred Heart at Fairleigh Dickinson, St. Francis Brooklyn at St. Francis, Pennsylvania, Gardner Webb at UNC Asheville, Longwood at Hampton, Winthrop at Radford, CBS Sports Network, Wagner at Bryant. Wagner's favored by 1.5. Bryant's actually played pretty well in conference play, so I like them to pull off the home upset here. Cleveland State at Wright State, Chattanooga at the Citadel, Sanford at Mercer, East Tennessee State at VMI, Western Carolina at UNC Greensboro, South Carolina upstate at Charleston Southern. That's at 7:30. 8 o'clock, you have Tennessee Martin at Murray State. East Illinois at Belmont, Purdue Fort Wayne at South Dakota State, Southeast Missouri State at Austin Peay, UL Monroe at Texas State, Louisiana at UT Arlington, 8:15 Morehead State at Jackson State, 8:30 SAU Edwardsville at Tennessee State, Eastern Kentucky at Tennessee Tech, Eastern Washington at Southern Utah, Idaho at Northern Arizona, 9 o'clock, Pepperdine number 2 Gonzaga. Gonzaga is favored by a whopping 28.5. I'm going to say Gonzaga wins, and they barely cover. I'm going to say they win by 30. Cal Baptist at Grand Canyon, Chicago State at Utah Valley. On ESPN2, you have UConn at SMU. SMU is favored by 6.5. I think that's a big number for SMU to be giving at home. I think these two teams are around the same in terms of talent level. Both have obviously underachieved this year. So give me SMU to win, but UConn to cover. St. Francisco at BYU. BYU's laying 4, they'll win and cover. Fox Sports 1 at 9 o'clock, Cal at Arizona. Arizona's laying a whopping 13.5, they'll win and cover. 9 o'clock, ESPN, Dave Paschal Walton special. Oregon at USC. USC's favored by 2.5. I think Oregon's going to beat them outright on the road. I just think Oregon's a better team, even though Bull's not playing. So give me Oregon for the road upset. ESPNU High Point at Campbell. Campbell's favored by 5. Campbell's obviously a good offensive basketball team led by Chris Clemens. So give me Campbell to win and cover against High Point. 10 o'clock, St. Mary's at Pacific. St. Mary's is laying 8.5. I think St. Mary's will win, but Pacific covers. Portland at San Diego. San Diego's laying 16. I think they'll win and cover. I just think Portland stinks. Cal Poly, UC Irvine, UMKC, Seattle, Idaho State, Portland State, Weber State, Sacramento State, UC Davis, CSU Fullerton. ESPNU 11 o'clock. Hawaii at UC Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara's a 4-point favorite. Both of these teams are pretty good in the Big West Conference. The Big West Conference isn't that bad this year. They have those two teams and then a couple other decent teams in that conference as well. I think Santa Barbara wins and covers, though. And then on Fox Sports 1, you have Oregon State at UCLA. UCLA's favored by 1.5. Wrong team's favored. I think that at worst it should be a pick'em, and I like Oregon State to pull off the road upset. So give me Oregon State there. The NBA returns tonight after a week absence, or a little bit less than a week in terms of real games. You have the Suns at the Cavaliers, tankathon game. The Heat at the 76ers. The Trailblazers at the Nets at 7:30. Nets, by the way, honoring the great Ian Eagle, who is the voice of their team and has been over the past 10-plus years. He's fantastic, and I think he should replace Marv Albert once Albert retires on TNT. Although there's been rumors that it's going to be Brian Anderson or Kevin Harlan. But Anderson has obviously the Brewers' duties and baseball conflicts with NBA. I know ABC and ESPN have Mike Breen, who's also the voice of the Knicks. But that's more manageable because it's two NBA situations. And Ian Eagle obviously has football duties. But I think he can balance that out as he's shown throughout his great career of broadcasting. So I really think he deserves to replace Marv Albert. And good on the Nets for honoring him. 8 o'clock on TNT, the Celtics at the Bucks. Milwaukee is favored by 5.5. Kevin Harlan and Reggie Miller on the call. I like Milwaukee to win and cover because I think they're going to come out with a point to prove. Giannis Antetokounmpo wants to prove to everybody that he's the MVP, and this is a perfect opportunity, the first game of the post-All-Star break, to prove it for Giannis. So give me the Bucks to win by 10 at home against Jekyll and Hyde Celtics team. 10:30 you have the Kings at the Warriors, and on TNT at 10:30 you have the Rockets at the Lakers. Houston's favored by 3 points. This is obviously a fascinating game for so many reasons. Houston wants to get into the top 4. James Harden's pushing for MVP. And obviously the most important thing is that LeBron is trying to get his Lakers team to the playoffs. I don't feel super about it, but screw it. I'm going to take the Lakers at home. They're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder. Rondo against Chris Paul. Don't forget what happened in October between these two teams at the Staples Center. There's that brawl. I think that Rondo is going to get up for this game. They're going to shoot their threes. Lance Stevenson, I can see having a good game. Contavious Caldwell-Pope, I'm not a super fan of, but he can hit the 3 ball when he's going. I think LeBron wants to prove that he's still the greatest player in the world on TNT on a Thursday night against the MVP favorite in James Harden and the Rockets. So give me the Lakers at home to pull off a slim upset as Houston is a 3-point favorite here. Give me the Lakers, obviously, to cover the point spread and obviously to win the game outright at home against Mike D'Antoni and the Rockets. NHL. There was only 4 games on last night's slate. The Blackhawks defeated the Red Wings 5-4 in overtime. Great win for the Blackhawks. Yeah, they blew a 4-1 lead, but give them credit for rebounding after the blown lead to steal this game in overtime. They're 26-9. And in a playoff spot right now, and Detroit's 23-29-9. Number 1 star of the game with 4 assists is Anthony Mantha of the Red Wings. Number 2 star of the game with 2 goals and an assist, Dylan Larkin. Number 3 star of the game with the goal, Alex DeBrincat. Obviously, Patrick Kane had 2 goals in the game, including the overtime winner. And props to Mike Tirico. That was his first ever hockey game, and I think he nailed it. Good going by the former ESPN, now NBC announcer. The Avalanche destroyed the Jets 7-1. Jeez. Colorado goes to 25-24-11. To me, Winnipeg, that was really stunning that this team really hasn't played well. They lost 6 of their last 8 and now drops to 36-24 on the year. Number 1 star of the game with a goal and 2 assists, Carl Soderberg. Number 2 star of the game with a goal and 2 assists, Tyson Yost. Number 3 star of the game with a goal, Nathan McKinnon. The Flames defeat the Islanders 4-2, a great win for Calgary against another surprising team in the Islanders. They're 37-16-7. The Islanders dropped to 35-18-6. Number 1 star of the game with a goal and assist, Mikhail Backlund. Number 2 star of the game with the goal against his former team, Travis Havonic. And the number 3 star of the game with the goal, Johnny Gaudreau. And the Bruins defeat the Golden Knights 3-2 in a shootout. That's 7 straight for Boston. They are 36-17-8. Vegas drops to 32-25-5. And 6 straight home losses for Vegas. Number 1 star of the game with the goal and assist, Riley Smith. Number 2 star of the game with the goal, Nate Schmidt. Number 3 star of the game with 31 saves on 33 shots, Yaroslav Halak. Big slate tonight. 7 o'clock, the Wild at the Rangers, the Capitals at the Maple Leafs, the Hurricanes at the Panthers, the Senators at the Devils, the Sharks at the Penguins. 7:30, the Flyers at the Canadiens, the Sabres at the Lightning. 8 o'clock, NBC at SEN. You have the Kings at the Predators. On the call this game, I believe, is Chris Cuthbert and Brian Boucher. Or is it Alex Faust and Brian Boucher? I think it's Faust and Boucher because it's the Faust sometimes calls the Kings games whenever the Kings are on NBC. I said sometimes they do that. Just like how with Forsland and Carolina and Albert with the Rangers. But Forsland and Albert are obviously higher up than Faust. But I mean, Goucher is a better example of this, and even Randy Hahn of the Sharks. But yeah, Alex Faust and Brian Boucher on the call. The Predators have been playing good. The Kings have been a little better since their East Coast trip, although they dropped at home against the Capitals. So, the Predators, to me, are obviously the better team. Wouldn't be surprised if Los Angeles gave them a game or even won the game outright, but give me the Predators to win on home ice. Wouldn't be shocked if it went to overtime, obviously. 8:30, you have the Blues at the Stars. 9 o'clock, the Islanders at the Oilers. And the 10 o'clock is the Coyotes at the Canucks. Charlie Coyle last night was traded from the Minnesota Wild to the Boston Bruins for a 5th-round pick and prospect Ryan Donato. Good trade on both sides. I think getting Donato was a big win for Minnesota, even though I thought that Coyle was worth more than a 5th-round pick. I thought he'd fetch them at least a 4th, and I'm surprised because I thought Minnesota would buy rather than sell, and maybe they think that their little swoon is what's to come for this franchise, so they're trying to restock and rebuild. So I have to give them credit for noticing reality rather than wishful thinking of them going on a Stanley Cup playoff run, which I kind of thought what they were going to do, but I was proven wrong as Minnesota's new GM makes the move with Boston. And now Boston gets a little bit more versatile with Coyle. He can be played on any line, and he can play wing or center. And I don't think this precludes Boston from making a bigger move for like a Kevin Hayes or a Mark Stone. And I've heard Chris Kreider's name thrown around, but I don't think the Rangers are going to trade him. I think the Rangers want to build around him. So a good trade on both sides. Yeah, giving up Donato was tough, but Boston has a lot of other young assets that I believe that are higher on than Donato, like Jake DeBrusk and Charlie McAvoy among them. So, good job by both ends. By Boston getting a veteran that could play on either line in either position with versatility, obviously, as I just mentioned. And good job by Minnesota by getting a very good prospect back in Donato, even though they only got a 5th-round pick. I just think Donato alone's a win for them. Next, I'm going to do my Major League Baseball DH rankings as we get closer to the season. There's only 10 DHs on here because there's a couple sort of projected DHs that I believe will be playing at their normal positions like first base and left field, right field, whatever, like Giancarlo Stanton. I think we'll see a lot of time in left field because I'm not sure if Brett Gardner is still good as an everyday player. And then, obviously, Jose Abreu, they traded for Yonder Alonso, but I think that's a platoon situation So that's that. To the list we go. 10, Christian Stewart, Tigers. A lot of people feel that this is a breakout candidate in the making. He has no position, so they're going to throw him out at DH because that's his specialty, hitting bombs. 9, Mark Trumbo, Orioles. He's a DH at this point of his career. I think he'll put up some good numbers. Wouldn't be shocked if he's in a salary dump trade this summer. 8, Albert Pujols, Angels. This guy's washed up and is permanently a DH. 7, Kendrys Morales, Blue Jays. I think that, like Pujols, another guy's washed up, and again, wouldn't it be stunned if they used him in the salary dump trade? I don't think Pujols is tradable. I think this is like a Chris Davis situation, except Davis has a worser contract. Number 6, Shin-Soo Choo, Rangers. Another candidate to be a salary dump trade in the summer. And Choo was somebody that actually wasn't that bad last year, but he still has an owner's contract. 5, Carlos Santana, Indians. Phillies got off of that owner's contract and dumped him to the Mariners, and then the Mariners dumped him back to the Indians. I think Santana will thrive with Cleveland. That's where he's played his best. I think I could see him hitting like a 25 home runs with 80 RBIs this year, potentially, if he stays healthy. 4, Jay Bruce, Mariners. I think they'll play Bruce all around, but mainly at DH. And I think he's also trade bait this summer. 3, Nelson Cruz, Twins. I think this is a good value signing by Minnesota if it works out for them, meaning if they are good, then he'll help those young players a lot, grow and mature. But if it doesn't go well, I could see him being dealt if he's having a good year. And then if he doesn't have a good year, maybe, depending on how the Twins are doing, they can trade him for little or just keep him there to mentor the young kids. So they have some options in Nelson Cruz. I didn't mind the signing at all. 2, Chris Davis, Oakland Athletics. This guy has been a 40 home run, 100 RBI guy for the last 3 years, and I don't think he's getting the love that he deserves. He's a great player, and he's somebody that should have been in the conversation for the American League MVP last year, even though he was a DH. And number 1, JD Martinez, Boston Red Sox. That guy single-handedly changed the outcome of the Red Sox season, in my opinion. If they didn't acquire him at the last minute last year, they're not even division champions. The Yankees would have won the American League East last year if JD Martinez didn't sign there. And that is a fact. I'm not saying that that guy single-handedly took them to the World Series. I know it's a team game, but he was a big part of it. And he was a big part of Mookie Betts having a great year because he provided protection for him in the lineup. And obviously Bogarts, who had a career year. And guys that are role players like Ian Kinsler and Steve Pearce, Brock Holt. Like, all these guys were great. And obviously the protection and the length of the lineup that Martinez gave them was sensational. And another guy, Andrew Benintendi, who I think is only going to be getting better as he matures. But yeah, very deserving number 1 spot for JD Martinez of the Red Sox as the number 1 DH heading into the season. Before I get to my best bet, I'm going to do my latest version of my NFL mock draft, in which there's some changes after the number 7 pick, although I did some flip-flopping around the top 5. And without further ado, here we go with my 7th mock draft. With the first pick, the Arizona Cardinals select Nick Bosa, defensive end, Ohio State. Bosa obviously is the best guy in this draft, and him and Chandler Jones on the same defensive line together would be petrifying for opponents. With the second pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Quinnen Williams, defensive tackle, Alabama. The 49ers need talent everywhere on their defense, especially on their line. Williams was the best interior lineman in the country this past season, and he obviously would be an upgrade over some of the guys they already have. Number 3, the New York Jets select Josh Allen, defensive end, outside linebacker, Kentucky. Yet again, the Jets get a steal with Allen, who would be the best fit among the top defensive players in the draft, because he provides versatility, and the Jets need versatility on their defense. 4. Oakland Raiders select Rashawn Gary, defensive end, Michigan. The Raiders begin to build their pass rush by selecting Gary, who didn't live up to his top status as a top 100 recruit from high school. If Gary produces in the pros, this will turn out to be a great pick, as they would finally sort of replace Khalil Mack. With the 5th pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Jonah Williams, offensive tackle, Alabama. Williams was the best lineman perhaps in the country this season and did a great job protecting Tua Tagovailoa. The Bucs' bigger needs lie on defense, but passing up on a future possible all-pro offensive lineman to protect Jameis Winston would not be great. With the 6th pick, the New York Giants select Dwayne Haskins, quarterback, Ohio State. There's a reason why I haven't changed the selection yet, and that is because I think the Giants want to take their Eli Manning successor. I don't think they loved Sam Darnold. I think they do love Dwayne Haskins, and Haskins to go with Barkley and Beckham in that offense would be petrifying. With the 7th pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Drew Lock, quarterback, Missouri. I had Kyler Murray here for some of my mocks, but Lock has drawn some looks from Tom Coughlin in the Jags front office. Lock has a very good arm and has a very high ceiling if he lives up to his potential. With the 8th pick, the Detroit Lions select Cleveland Farrell, defensive end, Clemson. The Lions haven't needed the position if Ziggy Ansah departs in free agency, so the pick makes sense. Dabo Swinney has 3 talented defensemen slated to go in the first round, and Farrell here is the first off the board. With the 9th pick, the Buffalo Bills select Ed Oliver, defensive tackle, Houston. Oliver was once projected a top 5 pick, and his stock has dropped dramatically, so there's a chance Oliver is a steal at this point. The Bills need more help on the offensive line rather than the defensive line, but the retirement of Kyle Williams opened up a hole that Oliver can facilitate. With the 10th pick, the Denver Broncos select Greedy Williams, cornerback, LSU. Williams is the best corner in the draft, and the Broncos have a need here with a few of their corners slated to become free agents. A quarterback is probably the more wiser choice here, but it's more unlikely now with the acquisition of Joe Flacco. With the 11th pick, the Cincinnati Bengals select Devin White, linebacker, LSU. White was the best linebacker in the country this past season, and he'd be a fine selection here. Vontaze Burfict is injury-prone nowadays, and Preston Brown's a free agent, so White would provide some energy to an aging Bengals defense. With the 12th pick, the Green Bay Packers select T.J. Hockenson, tight end, Iowa. Jimmy Graham isn't the same player he once was in New Orleans, so the Packers should snag a fast-rising tight end in Hockenson. He's a good blocker and has drawn comparisons to George Kittle of the 49ers. With the 13th pick, the Miami Dolphins select Kyler Murray, quarterback, Oklahoma. I do think the Dolphins like next year's quarterback class better, but they seem to be ready to move on from Ryan Tannehill. Murray has officially chosen football over baseball, and he is a surefire first-round pick, and I can see the Dolphins taking a chance here. With the 14th pick, the Atlanta Falcons select Montez Sweat, defensive end, Mississippi State. Some might feel that this is a reach, but Sweat's stock has risen recently after a good Senior Bowl. Sweat posted double-digit sack seasons 2 years in a row, and he's a solid run defender, too. With the 15th pick, the Washington Redskins select Daniel Jones, quarterback, Duke. With Alex Smith's future uncertain, the Skins take perhaps their future franchise quarterback in Jones. His stock has risen with a good showing in the Senior Bowl, and it sure seems like he's a surefire first-round pick. With the 16th pick, the Carolina Panthers select Jachai Polite, defensive end, outside linebacker, Florida. Polite is somebody coming off a breakthrough year in college, and his draft stock rose in light of it. The Panthers have a bigger need at the offensive line, but it wouldn't be shocking of them to take a talented pass rusher instead. With the 17th pick, the Cleveland Browns select DeAndre Baker, cornerback, Georgia. The Browns have a very good roster, so all they have to do is tinker it. Baker is someone that can come in and play with Denzel Ward and form a great secondary. With the 18th pick, the Minnesota Vikings select Jawan Taylor, offensive tackle, Florida. The Vikings were arguably the biggest disappointment in the league this past season, and their biggest issue was protecting Kirk Cousins. Taylor would at least help the Vikings' offensive line and find holes for Dalvin Cook. With the 19th pick, the Tennessee Titans select Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle, Clemson. Here's the second of the 3 Clemson defensive linemen to go off the board. Wilkins on the same front 7 as Jarrell Casey is a scary proposition. With the 20th pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Byron Murphy, cornerback, Washington. Murphy falling this far would be a steal for the Steelers. Yes, they absolutely need a wide receiver with the pending departure of Antonio Brown, but this wouldn't be a bad option either, considering their secondary isn't great. 21. The Seattle Seahawks select Nasir Adderley, safety, Delaware. Adderley is someone whose stock is rapidly rising by the week, and his good Senior Bowl performance is a big reason why. He's not even considered the best safety in the draft, but the Seahawks have a need here at the position, and I can see Pete Carroll rolling the dice. With the 22nd pick, the Baltimore Ravens select DK Metcalf, wide receiver, Ole Miss. Metcalf is someone who could wind up being a steal from the spot. This would be a nice weapon for Lamar Jackson, who needs a downfield threat guy to help his development. With the 23rd pick, the Houston Texans select Dalton Risner, offensive tackle, Kansas State. Cornerback is another big Texans need, but Deshaun Watson badly needs protection, and Risner would help the problem. The Texans have probably the worst offensive line in the sport, and that should be the team's top priority this offseason. With the 24th pick, the Oakland Raiders, courtesy of the Chicago Bears, select Marquise Brown, wide receiver, Oklahoma. The Raiders can use some young blood at the skill positions on offense to help Derek Carr out. Brown could be a first-rounder or even a day 2 draft pick, depending on how the draft goes. With the 25th pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select Josh Jacobs, running back, Alabama. The Eagles do have a ton of running backs, but none of them are that great. Jacobs has potential to be great and would be a nice backfield option for Carson Wentz or Nick Foles. With the 26th pick, the Indianapolis Colts select Kelvin Harmon, wide receiver, North Carolina State. The Colts look like a team that is going to be a Super Bowl contender for the next couple years. A defensive player is the wiser choice here, but Andrew Luck needs another reliable wideout other than T.Y. Hilton, and Harmon could be that. With the 27th pick, the Oakland Raiders select, courtesy of the Dallas Cowboys, Jalen Ferguson, defensive end, Louisiana Tech. Ferguson is someone who's a fast riser due to a strong showing at the Senior Bowl. The Raiders need more than one guy on that edge rush to replace what Khalil Mack brought to them, and this would be a nice gamble with their final first-rounder. With the 28th pick, the Los Angeles Chargers select Jerry Tillery, defensive tackle, Notre Dame. The Chargers' defensive front was exposed in their playoff defeat against the Patriots, and bolstering their interior would be wise. Tillery is someone whose stock is rising and is worth the selection here. With the 29th pick, the Kansas City Chiefs select Deontay Thompson, safety, Alabama. The consensus top safety in the draft, dropping this far would be a mega steal. The Chiefs are obviously a team with a dire need of defensive talent, especially in the secondary, which would make sense for them to take Thompson. With the 30th pick, the Green Bay Packers select, courtesy of the New Orleans Saints, Mack Wilson, linebacker, Alabama. The Packers are another team that needs youth sporadically around their defense, especially with stopping the run. Wilson would be a good addition to the linebacking corps to strengthen the unit. With the 31st pick, the Los Angeles Rams select Dexter Lawrence, defensive end, Clemson. The third Clemson player off the board here, as Lawrence could wind up being the best one of the trio. He reminds me of Philadelphia Eagles defensive lineman Fletcher Cox, and the thought of Lawrence and Aaron Donald on the interior in Los Angeles is scary. With the 32nd pick, the New England Patriots select A.J. Brown, wide receiver, Ole Miss. The Patriots would probably be better off picking a defensive player here, but knowing Bill Belichick, I could see him doing something different. Brown would be another nice weapon for Tom Brady, as Brady is finishing up his career. Next up is my best bet of the day, brought to you by FanDuel. It is a 13-team play. All basketball, 1 NBA, and 12 college. About 3-1. I only wagered 64 cents, winning $1.98 with the payout of $2.64. I wanted to go a little bit smaller today. Because last night cost me because I took Lipscomb and I took somebody else I lost outright as a double-digit favorite. And I did not take Duke because I thought Carolina had a chance to win, and obviously I didn't know that Zion was going to get hurt. The Warriors, Stony Brook, UMass Lowell, Wright State, East Tennessee State, Northeastern, Hofstra, UNC Greensboro, Northern Kentucky, Charleston Southern, Belmont, South Dakota State, and Murray State is the best bet of the day, that 13-team parlay, courtesy of FanDuel. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping from college basketball, NBA, and NHL. I'll do my starting pitchers rankings, which is going to be a big list. And if I have time tomorrow, I'll do my mock bracket as well. And I hope you guys have a great day, everybody.